Hey everybody, I am Seth For Privacy, COO at Cake Wallet, host of the Opt Out podcast, and generally Freedom Tech maximalist. So privacy for me is honestly quite straightforward. It's not necessarily about being that strange man living in the woods alone. It's not necessarily about being the most hardcore cypherpunk. It's really about just giving people the ability to choose. We used to have this natural paradigm where we could choose who knew our conversations, who knew who we paid, who knew who we had business deals with. And we've gotten into a place where everyone knows all of those details, and we've lost that choice. So really for me, privacy is just about reclaiming that ability to have individual choice on who you want to be private from, who you want to reveal data to. By far, the biggest challenge for privacy adoption, I think, is user experience, actually. I think the cryptography, the underlying tools, we've had what we need when it comes to encryption for many, many years. Honestly, decades. We've had the core building blocks that we needed. And really the biggest thing that has been a hurdle to adoption is that many of the privacy tools have been built really by nerds for nerds. And there are some pros and cons to that. But the biggest con is that when it's approached by people who have a deep understanding of the technology, but we don't look outside of that, we can build tools that are just far too complex. And I think the biggest change and where we've seen the greatest adoption of privacy tech over the past few years has been when people are able to build tools where even when you don't necessarily think you care about privacy, even when you're not going above and beyond to find privacy, to reclaim privacy, you can still do it. Signal is a great example of that. Even some of Apple's privacy tech, obviously there are pros and cons to their approaches, but many of their tools as well are those that do provide privacy to individuals who don't even realize that they have a need for privacy today. And I think that has to be the goal. I think probably the biggest one by far, I think there's really good solutions in messaging. There's really good solutions in browsers. There's really good solutions in VPNs now. I think one of the biggest that has taken a long time to get here is PGP, basically a way to do email in an encrypted way that is not reliant on a single provider. We have things like Proton Mail. Proton, I think, a fantastic company doing really cool stuff, but you're still limited when you want privacy between Proton to Proton user. I think it would be really fantastic if we could build easy to use tools that would allow people to use PGP to encrypt emails, even if they're using Gmail, even if they're using Yahoo, whatever their email provider of choice is. It would be fantastic to have tools in a browser that could handle the encryption like that in a way that they wouldn't even realize. Install a browser extension, have encryption to your emails no matter what provider you're using or the other person is using on the other side. So I think the biggest thing, and this is kind of the intersection of cryptocurrency and privacy, but the biggest thing that's still kind of in the research phase and theoretical is the ability to use things like DeFi, to use things like stablecoins in a way that is privacy preserving without critical compromises. There have been a lot of people who have kind of tried to do that, but often it's been either a money grab or a marketing play or too early in terms of technology to actually enable that. And I think that's a big area where we could see growth, because a lot of times you either can have privacy or you can do things like DeFi, or you can use things like stablecoins, which, like stablecoins or not, they're an essential tool right now in much of the world, even a tool for freedom, as painful as that is to say, temporarily. I don't think that'll last forever. But being able to enable those is something that we need. Projects like DarkFi that have been doing research on the cutting edge, trying to find ways to solve that. But we also will have to be careful that we do that with user experience at the center, to do it in a way that is achievable and approachable for average people, not just for us nerds. I think primarily, to me, a neo-cypherpunk is somebody who is merging not only this central idea of being a cypherpunk, which is to write code, to build encryption tools, but to merge it with that idea of user experience and approachability that I've been talking about. I think very early on, a lot of the tools that were being built by cypherpunks, because that was all that was really possible, were very, very cutting edge, very difficult to use, but fantastic tools. And I think the biggest shift now will be those who can look at both product and underlying cryptography and find good ways to merge those together. I think that ultimately is that kind of next wave of being a cypherpunk. I think maybe somewhere in there, as a resident AI hater, maybe somewhere in there is the idea of how can we actually leverage AI to help more people become cypherpunks, especially that write code part of being a cypherpunk has been a limiting factor for many people to be able to really be included in that group, I guess. But I think that could change. We'll see. AI has a lot of promises that have not panned out so far, but I think that could be part of enabling that too. The reasons for tribalism in the privacy space are quite similar to those outside of it. Like, I don't think there's anything really, I don't say this in a negative way, but there's not anything unique about the communities in the privacy space, in the sense that the vast majority of it is people looking for a place to belong, people looking for a community who they can build a product for. And then oftentimes there's money at stake and deciding, if my privacy tool is going to be used, I can profit. If my privacy protocol is going to be funded by grants, I can actually build it. And whenever you have financial incentive at play, whenever you have tokens at play, whenever you have cryptocurrencies like Monero or Zcash at play, you get that, just that aggression, that idea that my tool has to succeed, and I would rather others fail so that mine can succeed, instead of viewing it as a rising tide that lifts all boats. And I think that is definitely a blind spot and a struggle, and it's something that seems consistent throughout the cryptocurrency space, and we brought a lot of that into the privacy space. But it's interesting that it's not unique also to the crypto-specific privacy projects. I've seen that throughout the privacy influencer space, the privacy protocol space as well has been problematic. So I think it's this almost a natural human desire where I want to find community, and then I want to defend that community, even if that's actually detrimental to the tool that I'm trying to support or the community I'm trying to build. I think the only real hope for uniting crypto and the free and open source communities is to prove that there are real human use cases for this stuff, that it goes beyond the degen, that it goes beyond the perp swaps, that it goes beyond the leverage trading, and that there is much more here. Many of the things that Satoshi promised with Bitcoin, many of the things that Monero, Zcash, etc. have been built on, are this idea that in order to have any other human freedoms, we have to have financial freedom. And that's not something that's achievable with fiat currencies today. That's something that we can only do with cryptocurrencies that are privacy preserving. So I think the onus really falls on us in the crypto communities to not only build the tools, but also tell the stories to show that this thing that I've built is not just something that people are using to launder money. It's not just something that people are using to profit and speculate, but it's something that is actually helping to empower human freedom and flourishing at scale. And that's where that adoption will come in. Because I think that is the uniting piece between the free and open source community and the crypto community, those in the crypto community who are actually serious about human freedom, which is ultimately the tools themselves should empower the individual, not the corporate entity, not the government. They should bring power back to the individual. And that's the crossover that we have to make. And a lot of that will come down to how good can we be at storytelling and proving that this stuff is actually empowering human freedom. I think from a technical perspective, like thinking about Gen Z's approach to freedom tech is tricky for me, because I think there's it seems like a lot less interest in the technical, in the cryptography, and much more interest in the storytelling. I think that actually ties back into what I was just saying about tying the crypto and FOSS communities together. I think very much Gen Z and even previous generations are not only looking for places to belong, but looking for causes that are actually helping people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we can teach, is telling good stories about how this stuff is actually empowering individuals, because that will draw in those who are seeking to do something more with their life. I think a big shift is that no longer are we just trying to find a stable job that I can work at for 40 years and then retire. We want to make sure that the time that we invest actually goes to something that matters. And that's a unique offering, I think, of cypherpunks, of neo-cypherpunks, of FOSS projects, of serious cryptocurrency projects as well. I think for me, it's very hard to envision a utopia. I'm constantly at war between my crypto anarchist side and my optimist solar punk side, and trying to figure out where the middle ground is. But I think if I had to say like what a utopia looks like, it looks like us using technology to build communities, not to destroy them. It's us using technology to build better human relationships, not just online on social media, but actual connections in person or globally where it makes sense. And ultimately, it looks like again, back to what is privacy, it comes back to that freedom of choice. I think if we're able to unlock individuals to choose what kind of money they use, what kind of tools they use, who they talk with, who they reveal information about themselves to, it will help us to build communities and relationships in a way that we haven't been able to for a long time. And I think that's what that utopia looks like, is that we actually become real again.